Welcome to Above the Garage.
Hi, friends. Welcome to our discussion of Season 1, Episode 7 of The Crowded Room. Let's do a round of introductions and dive in.
Hi, I'm Rachel.
Hi, I'm Raquel.
Hi, I'm Kimberly.
And I'm Kate. So this episode is entitled The Crowded Room and was written by Suzanne Heathcote and Akiva Goldsman and directed by Alan Taylor. Yeah, so I was confused when the episode opened at first what everybody was staring up at until Rya asked Danny if he watched the eclipse. And then it made sense, especially when she tells him that Carl Jung called eclipses harbingers of rebirth. Obviously, something big is coming, and we will finally get to see what was on the VHS Maddie gave her last night that seems so earth-shattering. And it is entitled Danny Sullivan. Pretty quickly after Rya walks in, Danny notices she's acting nervous, very perceptive of him indeed. She's nervous about blowing up his world in 5, 4, 3, 2. But first she does it in the way that she usually does, walking him through why he thinks they're there. Did he know that Jack came to see her? And she hands him Jack's glasses and he starts spinning, scrambling to think of ways the police could have gotten those from London. She explains to Danny that his brain is uniquely good at rationalizing and then proceeds to tell him that Jack didn't want her to tell him what she's about to, but she persuaded him to agree because they both care about Danny and they both want to help him. She needs to know if Danny trusts her first. It's obvious he does, but he can tell something big is coming and is clearly very nervous that he has no idea what it's going to be. So Rya pulls in the old school, quite literally the thing my teachers used to pull in at school, because I'm old, to play the VHS. Turns out the jewelry store across the street had a security camera, and Danny is visibly shocked by what he sees, that there's only one shooter present at all, and that's Danny. And then his brain starts scrambling again. The tape must have been tampered with, but she states it very clearly. No, you were the shooter, Danny. Only you. It was always you. And now Yitzhak is back. Yitzhak appears out of nowhere and commands Danny to sleep. So if you weren't sure before, Yitzhak is confirmed to be one of Danny's personalities now also. And obviously Rya can tell it's Yitzhak immediately from Danny's stories of Yitzhak and now hearing his Israeli accent. Not a great sign for Rya though, since he's the violent one, right? Isn't that his primary?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
When you were saying about the solar eclipse, I did a little Google research about like a spiritual meaning of a solar eclipse.
Oh.
Yeah.
And it says it signifies a time of transformation, personal growth, and profound realization. It is viewed as a powerful cosmic event that encourages introspection and changes in various aspects of life.
Wow.
Fair enough.
Do you think that was just a coincidence?
No. However, it was a historical event. I looked up the date because so this gives us an exact date stamp. There was a solar eclipse on February 26, 1979. And there wasn't going to be another solar eclipse until August 21st, 2017. So they're rare. And I like what Kimberly pulled up. That fits very well with what we learn in this episode.
Yeah.
That 2017 one was my wedding anniversary, my 7-year itch wedding anniversary.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll have to
That's cool.
think about this later.
Very cool.
Really? I didn't know that they were that rare.
Yeah, me neither.
Obviously, I should understand how the sun and moon work better, but I had no idea.
Well, and the truth is, what I looked up, I'm not sure it would have been that visible from New York. It looked like it was mostly visible from the Pacific Northwest and Canada.
Right.
But, creative license.
Right. Huh. I wonder if the true story, I wonder if he was actually in trial then.
Yeah.
Billy Milligan's trial started December 4th, 1978. So it's possible or likely that it was actually happening then.
I guess if it happens like every
40 years,
30
something.
40 years or something, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
then I guess it is something to kind of be like, ooh, what's that?
Yeah. Solar eclipse is the one you're not supposed to look directly at. Like, I don't know, look through a contraption or something, or special glasses, because I think that was a big deal. The last time there was a solar eclipse, it was probably that 2017 one. There was all this stuff in the news about don't look directly at the sun, and they were handing out, or you could buy special glasses at the store and stuff to look at it.
I remember in primary school, which was like late 90s, I guess.
Aren't you a baby?
I remember everyone was like, oh, you can't look at the sun today. Like, obviously, I guess that wasn't a solar eclipse. What the hell was that then?
I remember that in an event in my elementary school too, and I'm older than you. So like, late 80s or early 90s. I remember that as well. So it is a good question. Maybe lunar eclipses still involve the sun, so you can't fucking look.
Yeah, maybe.
directly.
The sun, I think, is on the opposite side of the earth, and then maybe it's the earth passing in front of the moon.
Yeah, maybe.
I remember like we were at my mum's vacation house that we had when we were kids. So I probably was in like 12, 13, and there was like one that completely made the sky go dark for like 2 seconds. I don't know which one that was, and you couldn't look at that direct.
Right, exactly. That's funny that we all have this memory of not being able to look at the sun directly. Being told that specifically in elementary school or middle.
I just wanted to just express how excited I was when this reveal happened with Yitzhak putting Danny to sleep and taking over, because I mean, I've been kind of watching the show through that lens this whole time, but when it finally was revealed on the show, I was just like jumping up and down. I was so excited.
I wasn't expecting it, but it did give me goosebumps, like when he was like, sleep.
Yes.
It reminded me of like Mantis on Guardians of the Galaxy.
And you see him standing behind him, and yeah,
I was excited too, because somewhere early on I decided I thought Yitzhak was an alter, especially when he pulls Danny back into the shadows when Angelo's at the house and like takes over, and that's when I was.
And then he only appears after he's already left. Danny comes back when he's already left.
Right. Yeah.
In the same scene that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And also even back in episode, like, I don't know, 2 or 3, when his mom and Marlon come to the house and Yitzhak's like, you handle this. And then he like fumbles, and then Yitzhak steps up, like literally steps in front of him and takes over.
That was what I was going to mention, because I loved how they did it though, because they were showing Marlon's reaction to what was happening. And I remember like trying to imagine like if Yitzhak was really inside Danny's head and Danny was the one doing all of that, it would have emitted those reactions from Marlon, because he was kind of like, what the fuck, like he was he was, and the way that just imagining if Danny was suddenly so assertive and so confrontational with him and speaking in this Israeli accent like right in his face, it would have emitted those
elicited that
reactions. Yes, exactly.
I wonder how many of the personalities that his mum has met, because like obviously that would have probably been the first time that they would have met like the Yitzhak personality, right, in that scene.
Yeah.
Where his mum was like looking at him, was like, oh, it's a new one today.
Yeah, it's possible because if Danny didn't really even meet him until he moved into that house, it's likely, that it's the first time that his mother would have seen that.
I think it's safe to assume that probably he created the younger versions of it earlier on, like Mike and Johnny.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And in this episode, you see like all these sleeping characters, right? So I mean, it seems like there's a lot of retired characters as well. So okay, but the next thing we see is Danny waking up on his back. Now he's watching the eclipse in a large yard by the trauma-filled barn where Marlon would take them to sexually abuse them. He walks over, opens the door, slowly walks in and through the barn, looking around. Beautiful light coming through the slats, by the way. Nice shots.
Oh, God, yeah. That was like the whole episode. All the barn scenes were so beautiful. Like you could even in the close-ups, you could see like the little fleckles of like dust because of the light.
Yeah.
And the light, yeah.
It was so nice.
If you guys don't follow us on Instagram and Twitter, you should, because Kimberly makes like the prettiest collages as she calls them. And you should come follow us because these are going to be pretty.
It was just about first shot of the barn when he's like looking down and it's like this empty, really big space with like the gaps and the holes. I thought it was like really good representation, like visual representation of maybe his mind, because you have all of these like holes in his stories and stuff that he's not connected yet and we've not seen yet. And I thought it was really good way of showing it.
Yeah.
I love how it's all shown.
It was beautiful. I also didn't expect it to be that deep. Like he enters and then you look down and it's like this huge spiraling staircase that goes down for I don't know how many stories. Because when we'd seen tiny little flashes of it in previous episodes, you just kind of see the bottom where they step down into where all that standing water is. But it's just this enormous chasm of just this huge space. Just like imagining that sort of the complexity of that inside his mind. It's a really cool symbol.
I was waiting for the stairs to move like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if do you think is that physically that big though, or is just the way he thinks of it? No.
Oh no, yeah. It's just
I don't think the original barn.
In his mind is that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a cool reveal because you don't expect it. And then it's like, whoa.
Mm-mm.
Mm.
Yeah, and then there's the rain pouring through a different section, or water anyway, and it brings to mind the flashes of the flooded room that we've seen before, and we will see again later. And he starts to hear voices, men arguing, men he knows. Yitzhak and Jack are arguing in the barn. And then we see the others too, Johnny, Mike. And this is our first confirmation Mike is an altar too, right?
Yes.
when he's saying like, yes, sis, or come on, sis,
Yeah.
or whatever he says.
Mm.
Is that Mike or is that Johnny?
That's Mike.
Because in the last episode 6, he said like sup sis as well. So I'm wondering if Mike and Johnny kind of take over each other, because obviously the cuff was Johnny,
Yeah.
but Mike like says the yes sis thing. So I was like,
Mhm.
that's interesting.
Oh, interesting.
And I think Ryan makes a comment later on that Mike and Johnny are similar enough to Danny's personality that he could flip between all three of them, and other people around him wouldn't necessarily notice.
Right.
And I think that's a good representation of what we'd seen earlier in the show, of when he would be at school and he would just be talking to Mike and Johnny, or at the party and just casually talking to Mike and Johnny. I mean, I'm sure that, it probably looked like he was talking to himself, but at the same time, like he just, I think they were often present at the same time, and to Danny it just looked like they were just hanging out together.
Yeah, he's probably
Right.
just talking to himself in his own mind as well. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to express what he's saying to somebody else or out loud.
Out loud.
Right, he's not necessarily saying it out loud.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I think those characters he's probably lived with for a lot longer than maybe the newer ones.
Yeah, and they stick around too. Right.
And it's a lot easier for him to like go from one to the other.
Yeah.
Right.
Like early on, I think there were more clues for me that Johnny was one of his alters before we were able to talk about it on here. Like I said, the drug dealing, like that he's making money off the drug dealing. But there was a time, I think, when I was like, maybe Mike is real, because there weren't as many clues necessarily for me. I mean, I still kind of assumed that Mike was also not real, but anyway, this is confirmation I hadn't had yet.
Right. As I was watching the show, like if there was a character that I suspected was an alter, if that alter seemed to communicate with another character that Danny was also in communication with, then that sort of connected to me that they were both probably alters of Danny, and that's when Yitzhak sort of comes into the fold, because they were all together. Danny, Johnny, and Mike were together when they meet Yitzhak. And I mean, not necessarily, because if it could have unfolded in a different way, because if Danny were representing multiple characters, but other people didn't know that, then they could be real. But, there were different ways it could have unfolded. But that was kind of how I was thinking about it, because, and as we see later on with Ariana, because Ariana communicated with Yitzhak, and if I was thinking that Yitzhak was an alter, then that would also mean that Ariana was an alter as well. So that's kind of how I was watching it as it is like unfolding.
It's interesting though, the actual first time, just when you were talking, I was thinking the first time Danny sees Yitzhak is when his dad confronts him outside the party. Like, it's like he's thinking about bringing him around. You know what I mean? Isn't he like moving into the ghost house or something?
Yeah, and that was a moment when his dad didn't notice what he was looking at, because he said something. Danny said, "Is somebody moving into the ghost house?" And his dad looks over there and says, "What are you looking at?" Or who are you seeing, or something like that.
Right. So he wasn't really there.
So that was another clue that like it was something that was going on in Danny's head that maybe other people weren't aware of or couldn't see.
Yeah, it's very interesting, like thinking back on all this stuff or rewatching it, obviously, now that you know. Danny walks up to them and asks Jack what's going on. Yitzhak is firmly in the camp that Danny can't handle the truth. Don't send him out, he says. And Danny turns and sees his own sleeping body on some hay nearby. And then he disappears. The other personalities ask how he did that, how that can happen. I guess he hasn't shown up here before. Back in the interrogation room, Yitzhak throws everything off the table. He screams at her, "You piss me off." He's so angry. And in the barn, they're arguing over who needs to take over. Obviously, Yitzhak is not the right choice in the moment, but Mike doesn't want to do it. Johnny does, but he's a junkie and they don't trust him. But they're seriously scared Yitzhak is going to hurt her. The only thing holding him back is he has a soft spot for women and kids. And then finally, Mike steps up. She doesn't necessarily know this one yet, but they have nice little whispered communication as he gets handcuffed and taken away, and she tells him she's trying to help him, and he says, "I know you are," which is nice.
And he says, "Yeah, we're good, sis."
Yeah,
I thought it was cool how they like flashed between the scenes, so we got to see like Danny's mind, like Yitzhak talk to the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
stepping into the light, I guess.
Yeah, I really like how it's all done.
Yeah, I thought it was cool that the way that they shot that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like prior to this episode, other shows or movies that have sort of dealt with this topic of split personalities have done it similarly, like with an actual physical person representing the altar that is engaging with the person who is struggling with mental illness. And in this is the first time I've ever seen the inside of the mind portrayed in this way, where it's like they're all like it's standing in a group and they're taking turns of who's in the light, or I think they also describe it as being in the spot. And I just thought that was like just a really unique way to portray that, the way there's like conversations between them aside from what is seen on the outside, like aside from what you see Danny portraying himself, there's like this struggle, this internal struggle and conflict going on the inside at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was really well done, and I really like the way even Tom Holland was like acting the same person as well. Like I think with like the balance was really well, like going from the actual character playing the character they're playing, and then Danny actually acting the same way was really, really cool.
Yeah. And what we finally see in the previous episode is Tom Holland starting to portray these altars, which is what I've been also looking forward to seeing.
He didn't disappoint, did he?
If he doesn't get an Emmy for this role, there's like no justice. I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, he deserves all of the Emmys. He deserves Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Actress for like all of these different personalities he's portraying.
And then the prison is letting Mike play basketball, which seems quite generous despite what just happened. And he seems happy, while Yitzhak and Jack have a little talk about how Danny was able to see them for the first time. Jack doesn't think the Rya relationship is productive for them any longer. And strangely, Yitzhak disagrees. Being the expert in danger and all, he doesn't think she's a danger. Is that what you guys got from that scene? I got a little confused. They were arguing. Is that what Yitzhak was saying? He wanted him to continue with Rya?
Well, I think the point was Yitzhak was the one who was thinking that maybe Danny doesn't need them anymore. Like there was a point in time when he needed their protection, but maybe it's time for them to step back.
Yeah.
And Jack didn't like that.
He's pro Rya.
Yeah.
Jack tells Yitzhak that curing the disease means killing them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So continuing with Rya will mean the end of the altars, and they need a plan.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's pretty selfless of Yitzhak to be willing to sacrifice himself for Danny.
I think it shows there was a line, I don't know if it was this scene or somewhere else, where they talk about when you love somebody so much to protect them or was that here?
Not here, a bit later.
Okay.
I also feel like maybe with Isaac, like he's the one that protects Danny, so that's why he's created him. So right now Danny maybe if he's aware of what's going on, he needs that sort of I need to take over, because I guess that maybe he does have a feeling of what's going on, but he's not really allowed himself to actually realize. So I don't know if that's just him using Isaac to kind of like protect himself as well, because he does need the personality to either come out or go away.
Yeah.
The next morning, Danny is acting a lot like Johnny, I thought, as he was coming out of his cell, just his mannerisms, which was confirmed when he's looking to score some blow at breakfast. And he's in luck. He's approached by someone he's already asked, who's got the product on hand to deliver. Johnny's excited for a moment until he opens the paint for Danny. It was not actually what he was hoping for. And it really pisses him off, which in turn pisses off the gentleman who acquired it for him.
It would be so dangerous for someone like him to be in jail.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like, obviously, nobody knows really like what's going on. They just think he's
right, yeah.
like a nutcase, really. Like, why is he doing this to us? You know, he's just playing.
I think it would be nearly impossible to not get your ass kicked like on a constant basis in that scenario.
Yeah.
And he moves his search into the weight room, which seems like a truly terrible idea, Johnny. And it turns out to be a truly terrible idea. Someone kicks the shit out of him for welching on the crayon acquirer. Yitzhak is unfortunately napping at the moment, but fortunately wakes up to shove Johnny out of the way and then kicks the shit out of the inmate that is currently beating him up. It's so interesting to see how it's done, like we discussed.
Yeah.
The other inmates agree in awe as they watch his transition from Johnny to Yitzhak. Yitzhak's about to crush someone with a dumbbell when Jack takes over to try and talk things through. I liked how it was literally like Yitzhak was tagging Jack in.
Yeah.
The show is really well done showing these switches, but he literally, it almost looks like he has like a baton in his hand that he's handing off, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It's funny. There's nothing in his hand, but I like how they did it.
That was cool. I've got this, old boy.
Yeah. And he's just like, please, let me explain.
Yeah.
Danny really, he's so reliant on the other ones, though, that he never, I think this is part of the point, is that he never really developed his full
own personality,
confidence himself. He never had to, like, he never had to be assertive himself, because there was always somebody else who would do that for him. And, you know, I suppose that had he not split in these ways, those are like skills he could have acquired on his own. But, you know, he really, like, at this point in time, I feel like he needs, like when Yitzhak was talking about maybe we should all step back, it's like he is the most powerful of all of them. And he's been somebody who's been able to intervene and probably save Danny's life multiple times when it's been truly violent.
That's only physically, though.
Yeah, physically.
Like, I don't think right now, apart from maybe prison, he's not physically in danger.
Yeah, and Jack is the one who can step in and calmly reason,
manipulate other people's minds.
Yeah. And I feel like Mike is also a calming presence for him. Johnny seems to be a bit of a troublemaker. He's the one who seems to be addicted to drugs, so he's the one who's sort of getting him in trouble in that way. But he has also been resourceful in other ways in the real world. So, I mean, I think there's definitely benefits to all of them. But yeah, in this case, it was interesting how Yitzhak was a defense, but then Jack was a neutralizing force to kind of calm things down.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Just really like, as you already mentioned it, but I really like how we can see all of the personalities come into use and when he uses them.
Yeah.
I thought it was really cool to see all of the scenes interlaced. And go from one to the other. The way he just uses them not to break when the event happened. So like when he was playing basketball, he needed somebody really confident.
Right. And athletic.
Yeah, exactly. So it was really cool way of showing it.
Yeah.
When you think about it, he's quite talented.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
he's
Rachel was saying.
Much more talented than I am, and smarter and all the things.
It made me smile when he was like getting crayons. Like, he was really cute. I was like, oh, Daddy.
I think it was actually like pastels, though, just for the record. It was slightly more advanced. I think he was just calling them crayons to diminish them.
Oh, you mean those other things that he was drawing with, like in the other episodes, like the more advanced art thingies? Yeah.
Right. Pastels. It's this crazy Paz. It looks like crayons because of the brand name. It has like CRAY, but it's actually.
Okay. That's what Kate said. Like, Johnny was calling them crayons because he's expecting cocaine and he's getting these art supplies. So he's diminishing it, saying like, what are you giving me crayons for?
Yeah. So Danny's back at his cell looking out as Rya pulls up looking terrified. Danny's lawyer, Stan, accuses her of being hungover, but she says she just didn't sleep all night. I'm guessing probably a little of both. They're here to meet with the judge, though, who's agreed to meet with them ahead of the trial. Some small win for them. On the way in, Stan's still pretty negative. Rya's trying to be positive, and Stan points out that even though the DA likes a plea bargain, in this case, it's in everyone else's interest that this goes to trial. And nobody really cares about Danny. Everybody cares about themselves and their careers, and they don't want papers written about them letting the Rockefeller shooter get off scot-free. But he's still going to go for it because there is a small chance they could get off without a trial, and he hates going to court. And then as they're walking, Rya reveals to Stan for the first time that she's shown Danny the footage, told him about his personalities. I think Stan should have known this before going in here, but anyway, no, she springs it on him moments before the trial, the pre-trial, and he's shocked and not sure that was the right thing to do. And then we get another show crossover. Patricia Richards, the prosecutor, is played by Carmen Ejogo, who played the defense in Your Honor, which is an excellent show starring Bryan Cranston that we podcasted. If any of you haven't watched it, you should. Anyway, she plays a fantastic lawyer, and she's brought her own psychiatrist to this hearing, a highly decorated and garnished one, it seems. He has a lot of awards, and he's here to say multiple personality disorder is not real. He hasn't even bothered to assess Danny. Like, what the fuck? He dismissed the whole shebang just because of the condition she diagnosed him with. It's ridiculous. And insists that MPD is just an emotional hysteria, not a legitimate diagnosis. And it certainly doesn't mean he can't stand trial. It really pissed me off that he didn't even talk to Danny, check him out at all.
Yeah.
And he's here as an expert, like, witness.
That's just the way it was back then, though.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, it's the ignorance of the time.
yeah.
Mm.
Like, and then when I think it wasn't until the 70s where they started to use like behavioral psychology to like study criminals.
Yeah. That's crazy that it took that long to understand.
Which is when they came out with like the word serial killer until like the 70s. So
Gotcha.
yeah, it's a bit crazy that that was the times.
It is. Yeah, it's wild to think that that wasn't that long ago that they finally realized there's a mental component that needs to be explored.
I mean, unfortunately, it was a while ago. You feel of the 70s like they were like 30 years ago, but that's over 50 years ago.
I know.
Yeah.
Now they're like 50. It's so crazy. It's so weird that like 60s music is like oldies to me, right? But it's actually like 90s music is now oldies to like kids.
Exactly. Yeah, that's always a rude awakening when the music you listen to in school, high school or college or whatever is now classic rock, and you're just
Right.
like, no.
Or like Nick at Night is playing like Friends and shit. Like
Yes.
it used to play Happy Days.
It used to be Patty Duke or whatever.
Right. So funny. We're so old.
I know.
No.
Now the judge invites Danny to come in, and he's extremely subdued when he walks in, such that Rya asks him if he's okay. She sees his face is bruised, asks what happened, but he doesn't answer. And then when he starts to answer Patricia's initial questions, his British accent slips out a little. Tom's obviously, as we've discussed a million times, outstanding at all of this, like the quasi accents, the showing like that Jack's pretending to be somebody else, but then, slightly slips in. I don't know, it'd just be so hard to do that, the quasi accents and the moving back and forth between them. It's just incredible.
Agreed.
But it's interesting too, like every time he walks in a room, Rya like looking at his face, trying to figure out who he is at that moment. It's exactly what you would have to do.
And she's like muttering under her breath, "That's not Danny. That's
Stan's like, I know, but we have to do this.
We have to pretend that he is Danny because he is Danny.
Yeah.
Right.
They think we're crazy. Yeah, Stan obviously knows, but he asks who Danny went to Rockefeller Center with, and Danny just calmly replies he was alone. That's when Rya says, it's not Danny. So Stan then asks about Ariana and Yitzhak, and Jack tells him they came together in the house. He describes them gentle like a tabby. Yitzhak is a bit feral, and then it switches. So you're looking at the inside of his mind for the pun. They're my cats, which cracks Joni up. But I love how enthralled the whole group of alters is watching Jack handle the questioning.
Yeah.
Very intrigued to see where this goes because obviously their futures depend on it. Nobody in the pretrial cares that Rya tells them that this is not Danny, this is Jack, one of Danny's alter egos. And when the judge asks Stan if he has any other questions for his client, I also love the look that Stan gives him, like reading into him and deciding, nope, that's not Danny. There's no purpose to any further questions,
Yeah, I felt like Stan became more of a believer in this scene.
Right.
Rya's already a believer, but Stan's the only one, I think, who'd had actual experience with Danny before. And I think he's finally like, now that Rya's brought him in on her theories about this and what she's experienced and what she believes is going on with Danny mentally, it's like Stan is finally seeing it happen before his eyes, and he's finally getting it, which was I was happy to see him actually having her back in that area, and not also being somebody who's dismissing this as just being just absurd or whatever.
Yeah, and I thought his acting was incredible too, because like you said, you can see all that basically playing out on his face as he's like, there's so much more going on under the surface. These two people trying to gauge the actual situation that's going on, and you can just see that, and he did a really great job. Christopher Abbott did a really great job here.
Yeah, it's annoying me that he doesn't look as much like Jon Snow right now. I'm just like, what the fuck?
Ruining it for you.
Ruining it.
That was funny yesterday when you said you didn't think it was Christopher Abbott because he didn't look enough like Kit Harington.
Yeah, it's very strange.
The end result of the session is the judge thinks Danny's perfectly lucid and starts off the case pissed off at Danny's legal team. Patty's feeling quite entertained as Stan sidles up next to her on his way out to work on a plea bargain. He pleads guilty. You send him to a mental hospital for a long time. But Patty's convinced that he's a criminal, that when she looks hard at him, she's going to find a history of violence. And she points out that there are thousands of Black men in jails right now that got no pass. Why would she give one to this white kid?
And I think Rachel, mentioned how there was only Black people in prison when we were watching it. And I think it was a really good point to like get her to say that.
They're
going to spend a lot of money probably defending him.
Yeah.
And then they would never say that to do that for a Black guy, I don't think.
Right. And you're saying that the prison is more populated by African Americans?
Yeah, when there was like the scenes in prison.
Seeing more, all the prisoners, right?
I don't think there was another single white person, yeah.
Which is sadly accurate, I'm sure.
Yep.
On Rya's way out, she stops by Jack to tell him how incredibly he's fucked up his own future. Yitzhak still has Danny's body weight. He won't be able to do shit against people in the prison he's headed to. She hopes this ruse was worth it to him. And Jack just laughs as she's leaving. But we see that night that everybody's stressed. Danny's sleeping fitfully. The alters are arguing. Yitzhak's considering that maybe they are the problem. Maybe he doesn't need us anymore. Jack's always saying, face the music. Maybe it's time for Danny to actually do that. Mike and Johnny think that's bullshit. They argue. Jack seems to be like kind of taking it okay, thinking over what Yitzhak's saying until he pulls out a gun and shoots him. I can't believe Yitzhak was taken down that easily. It's sad. I like him.
Yeah.
Well, my thought was he's the most protective. Well, no, everybody's protective, but he's the one who's physically protective.
Mm-hmm.
Which is sort of occasionally what Danny needs in prison, because he's just
you should keep him around.
Yeah, like I was like, Yitzhak's, and he's very helpful at certain times.
Yitzhak's the only way they're going to survive.
Yeah, it's true. Like I think that where he can cause problems is that in prison you get in a lot of trouble if you're getting a lot of fights in prison. So if he intervenes and hurts people, then that's possibly not great. But at the same time, sometimes Danny needs somebody to physically intervene to save his actual life. So
yeah, it's better than the alternative.
Yeah, if he's physical with like Rhea or somebody else,
that's bad
outside of the prison. So obviously he's physical with the prisoners, no one is really going to care about that. But he's violent with during the trial, things like that, he's going to be in a lot more trouble.
Definitely.
That's not physical trouble.
Right. Like the fact that Yitzhak was the one who jumped in and nearly attacked Rya was not great for Danny.
Exactly.
Because that's not the time when you want a physical altercation to actually happen. But like you just said, if he's being attacked inside the prison by somebody else who's much stronger than Danny himself, then Yitzhak is much more helpful to come in and actually fight back.
I mean, honestly, why doesn't he get rid of Johnny? I don't think Johnny's worth it in prison.
He probably can, because he's probably an addict as well. So I don't think he can get rid of him.
That's a good point.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
It's strange that you don't notice, I haven't done extensive research on this condition or this disorder, but I feel like what I have heard is that certain alters or split personalities can take on physical attributes that others don't share. Like you could have one that's nearsighted, but it doesn't mean that everybody is nearsighted. And so it's almost like if you have one that's addicted to drugs, because I don't notice Danny with the same addiction or withdrawal symptoms when he's Danny or when he's any of the other personalities. So I almost wonder if the addiction is only with Johnny.
Right.
Or that maybe when Johnny comes up, when he feels like he needs his fix or whatever.
Yeah, I think when he's experiencing withdrawal.
Yeah.
That's a very good point, though. I'm glad you brought it up, Raquel, because I hadn't thought of it that way. But yeah, it is an actual physical addiction you can't just get rid of as easily as a mental.
Yeah.
Or maybe you can, Rachel. I don't know. Yeah, it's very interesting to research. Yeah.
We don't know. Exactly.
I don't know.
Very interesting. But the consolation is that when Danny wakes up, Ariana's here finally. Danny's so happy to see her. She promises him it's okay. They're going to figure it out. And then she reveals to him that she's one of them too. They're all there for him. They're all him. They don't want to leave him and they're only there to help him, but he can't just go back to sleep this time. They need each other to live. And they stare at the spotlight in the barn while she tells him she comes there to take his loneliness. Being close to people is too hard for him, so that's when she shows up. He asks if she's always known that she's not real, and she says only when they're in there. So when he's asleep, I guess. And he asks if there are other people like him. She tells him no, he's special. Is that just because she doesn't know that there are other people like him, or just because he's unique in the way that he's, everybody's unique?
Yeah, I think she just wants to calm him and be like, it's fine, don't worry,
Yeah.
You're special. So he takes a more calm leeway.
Right.
That's what I got from it.
And then she walks him through the room we've been seeing in the flashbacks, the flooded barn room full of people that he's put out of commission. And there are a lot of them. She tells him they're all him and they each had a purpose once upon a time. Jack calls them undesirables. And then he sees Yitzhak in there, which she explains by telling him Jack is basically the crowded room manager. When things start to get out of control, Jack sorts them out.
I was just going to say about Ariana, that scene when she's like, "Oh, I'm here to take your loneliness away." It's like, because I think it's in episode 3 when she's talking about being raped. I just feel like he might have created her to kind of like connect with what happened to him, but it's not actually something that's happened to him, it's happened to somebody else.
Yeah.
And also obviously she gets angry about it, and I think she said something about, "Oh, I just want him to disappear," the guy that did that to her.
Right.
Again, I think that may be a way of like Danny dealing with the fact that he really hates whoever did that to him.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because she says like she always feels him on top of her, right? Which is really awful. But I'm surprised then that she's telling him her point is to relieve his loneliness, because it seems like her larger point is even to take off that trauma off of him and be the one that remembers, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Like he doesn't know that yet though, so I think that's kind of like a way of like taking that from him and place it on another person.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. She bears that burden. And she doesn't want him to know, I don't think.
Right. That's really interesting.
Yeah. And we talked about the lighting already, but like especially on Ariana, like when she's in front of that light, when Danny approaches as well and he looks up, like that whole scene of light was just amazing.
The whole barn scenes are so pretty.
It's so gorgeous.
And that was probably just a set as well. Like, it's mind-blowing how they managed to create these things.
Yeah, it reminded me a bit of Handmaids, because I like saw cobwebs as well, and like the water dripping, and like they did that as well in the barn scene of Handmaids. Like, but yeah, it was great. Like, it's amazing what the set people really do.
This is just such a great scene of revelation for the audience and for Danny, just bringing him into the fold. And because earlier they put him to sleep, I think, and he'd never done that before. They said he'd never come awake into the barn before, that he'd never seen that. So now they're explaining everything to him, their purpose and what they've done for him, their roles that they've all served. And I think it's Jack who explains in more detail how it was the trauma that Danny experienced of what happened to Adam that made him split, and he mentally split into many pieces. And it said I think I put in my notes that he said that it made you want to die, but you didn't die, you broke into many pieces. But they were all guardian angels to help you live. So I thought it was like a beautiful way that he put all that.
I think Rya said something similar. I don't know who she was talking to, and I don't quite remember the episode, but she does mention that.
Oh, Maddie?
I think it was him. That he split into those personalities so he wouldn't go crazy.
Yes.
So I think it was like similar wording. Yeah, it was really good.
I think I just wrote that he said that Jack had said that it made him tear into many different pieces, all him.
Yeah, and then Jack's honest with him, tells him Rya wants to send them all away with medication, and Danny asks Jack what he wants him to do. And Jack tells him to fire her, and that he cannot and will not plead insanity. All his alters are asking Danny to protect them now.
I was surprised actually that Ariana, I kind of thought she'd go the other way, like with Yitzhak and Mike. I think Mike was saying like he agreed, maybe Jack.
Yeah, Mike agreed with Yitzhak.
Yeah.
And I think I agree with you, Kimberly, that it seems like that Ariana might have been on the side of what's best for Danny rather than what's best for the alters.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, they all seem to be trying to convince Danny that he needs to take full control, and he needs to convince Rya that he's not, because they don't want to end up, their goal is to keep Danny from going to the psychiatric or to go to the hospital.
They prefer to go to prison and continue existing than to be wiped out.
Yeah.
Right. And they're telling him things like it's probably not a large offense, like nobody was killed. It's probably, so they're trying to tell him, like, convince him that you wouldn't be in prison for very long. You know, this wouldn't be that big a thing for you. And this way you get to keep all of us.
Right.
Or we all get to live.
If he really creates them to protect himself and the truth, if they do get rid of their personalities, so like if he does receive treatment for it, he potentially is going to expose himself to all the trauma that he's bearing. So technically, by protecting the split personalities, he's protecting himself as well. So like, I get that we're thinking that by getting rid of the personalities, he's doing himself a favor, but I don't think that's really true just yet.
Yeah.
And obviously he will have to come to terms with what's happened to him, and that might destroy him, because that's why he's created all these personalities, so he doesn't have to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, he's never had to deal with it before, so now he's, you know, in the show he's like a teenager, but you know, he's reaching adulthood. And you know, I think ultimately if he can survive it, I think handling it mentally, because in addition to that therapy, I would think they would also give him therapy to treat his trauma along with it. And that's really, I think, the healthiest thing in the long term, rather than continuing to split into all these different parts of himself.
But there's no, like, as we discussed earlier, at that point in time, there wasn't any sort of treatment for that. They didn't even think that, you know, it was even a condition. So
yeah, that's true, because they don't even acknowledge it as being a real disorder.
Disease, or condition. So yeah, I don't know. I that's kind of like what I got from like the different personalities kind of arguing with each other, because both arguments are true, and ultimately both of them do protect Danny,
right,
and themselves.
Yes, it's true.
Do you guys remember when we saw in an earlier episode Ariana like wading through the flooded room?
Yeah.
I think that was basically, I'm assuming that Jack basically killed her after the shooting, and then he called her back for this, knowing that she could get through to Danny.
I wonder how it works if there's like a voluntary, I'm taking myself out of this for a while. Like, she seemed to be voluntarily walking down those stairs into that kind of watery bottom. So I'm wondering if that was a choice she made to just sort of take a step back for a while.
Yeah.
I don't think if they can actually kill the personalities, though. I don't know if we...
No, I just mean it in like similar to what he just did to Yitzhak. Like, I feel like he benched her, not killed her. Yeah. But like, that's why she was missing this whole, for so many episodes. It's like, where's Ariana? Where's Ariana? You know?
Yeah.
Next day in the room with Rya, she's still absolutely livid from the pretrial hearing. She's furious that he pulled that on her, until she realizes something enormous has changed. It is Danny, and he is absolutely terrified. He starts quietly begging her, please, please. There are voices in my head. There's other people in here. I'm begging you. And like, Tom's performance in the scene is so fucking incredible. I know I keep saying it. I'm sorry, but it's just so good.
No, it's true.
No, it was amazing.
Oh my God, that ending gave me chills. I was just beside myself. I thought that was just incredible.
Heartbreaking. It's like
his breakdown at the end, because it was both emoting, but also like holding it in, like trying to hold it in at the same time. It was really was so well done.
And it was so quiet that if he was like saying, it was like they could hear him. Like, I'm going to speak really quietly because his voices can hear me. That was really, really good.
Right.
Yes.
The quietness added a lot. You're right.
I wasn't like 100% sure if he was acting at the end, like
same,
just because of the previous like scenes where he's, you know, where he was talking to the others about, you know, you can't kill us off and such. So yeah, I was a bit like, is he acting here, or is it legit? He really does.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah.
See, that was my note. Are we really? Is he putting an act on the voices, or when he's talking to Rya, or he actually is scared of what's going on?
Yeah,
because he seems really calmed with the whole thing when he's in the barn in the crowded room. So is that his way of protecting the voices, as he's been just taught to do?
Yeah.
Is he going with it because he wants that?
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's such a great note, because I think it just shows the complexity of his performance there, that you're not 100% sure where he's landing in that moment.
Yeah.
Is he truly begging Rya for help, or is this another like
an act
performance he's putting on?
Yeah.
I believed it. For me, I took it as he was genuinely terrified of what he's just learned and what's going on, what they're asking him to do, and he's breaking away a bit. I thought it was a moment of him finally taking control of his own life and trying to step away from the altars and say, please help me, I need help. So yeah, just gorgeous. It was just gorgeous acting all around, no matter how it was intended and how you interpret it. I think it was amazing.
Yeah.
Agree.
All right. I think that's a wrap on our discussion of episode 7. Come back next week on Friday for episode 8. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.